We've been keeping the good stuff. We're so what have you been up to? We can get them, but we gotta make sure they go there.
3 days. You can't do 3 days and not even know it.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
The brand presentation. The work that our
You're like Andrew. You're like Andrew. I'll think I'm Unless it makes my thought. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yeah, I knew her first.
Welcome. Thank you for being here today. There's we got one more coming in. Masita's Masita in the house. No one's gonna listen to me. All right, welcome. Thanks for being here today. Grab a seat, make yourself comfortable. I think we're in for a really good presentation and conversation. My name is Doug Jackson. I'm just one of the many members of this whole Curvy initiative. I'm part of the Downtown Revitalization, Entrepreneurship, Marketing Action Team, and half of you in the room have been part of that action team, so that probably needs no introduction. But we are going to introduce the initiative a little bit. Let me ask Christine to talk about, she's got a fact sheet, and talk about, if you haven't been part of the initiative, how you can be.
Thank you, most everybody. Anybody who hasn't been to one of the Clinch Valley Initiative meetings, glad to see everybody here. We have a one-pager handout. There are 5 action groups, so around 5 different goal areas. There is an email listserv if you're not on it, or if you want to have, if you don't have email, we send out letters as well. And we're just delighted to be here today. There's a lot happening, rock and roll, and decisions being made, so great to, and much of that is the work that all of you do. Frank Dukes is the director of IN.
And I say their extra lunch is here, so if anybody hasn't had lunch, somebody might have been filtering the cookies I heard. But I think there's actually food there.
And we'll make a new pot of coffee in the front too.
Great. So coffee's going to be brewing, sandwiches in the back. Help yourself, make yourself comfortable. We're working for, hopefully by the year 2020, we want the Clinch River to be recognized globally as a world-class ecotourism destination. And part of that is telling people what the Clinch River is, what the communities around the Clinch River are, what you can do on the Clinch River, how special and unique it is. So we've been going through this whole long process of figuring out how to tell people about that. And I'd like you to raise your hand if these two folks look familiar, if you've been in a meeting with them, if you've seen them traveling around, raise your hand real high. Okay, so Todd he doesn't know who you are. He's never seen you before.
He's multitasking. It's fine.
Well, this is we're headed toward a culmination of a lot of work, a lot of thinking that's been done, a lot of input. It's happened one-on-one, it's happened in groups, it's happened out in the field and communities. And I want to talk a little bit about the process. We're going to hear today, we're going to get the recommendations, the brand recommendation. And then a small group is going to, through the action team, is going to work to tailor that and pin it down so that we can move forward with our vision. If we want to have that happen by 2020, we need to get started. So we need to start pinning down this brand. And with that, I think that's probably all I'm going to do except for introduce these two fellas. Aaron Arnett and Ben Muldrow with the firm Arnett Muldrow, and they're specialists in community branding. And we're happy to have you here with us today.
Okay, so I will tell you, I've presented and spoken all over the country. I've given a lot of talks and branding reveals like this. I don't know that I've ever done one at the conclusion of a 3 to 4 hour meeting. So I'm going to try to make this entertaining because I know you've been sitting here for a while. One of the things, we'll start with a little audience participation. Does that sound good? Just so we can kind of break the ice. All right, so I want everybody to look to the person to their left or right and repeat after me. So look to somebody next to you and say, I'm so glad, you don't look like me. So, as we go through this process, you know, one of the things that we really want to be able to do is we want to be able to create and launch an identity system that can exist in this 4-county region, understanding that this system is going to coexist with numerous other regional efforts, with numerous other theme-focused efforts, whether it's arts, whether it's music, all these different things that are going to happen all at the same time. So we are creating a way that we can talk about this river and the connections that this river creates, so that on one hand, we can enhance the river, we can make it better and expose it to more people, but on the other hand, so that we can begin to better utilize it as an economic development catalyst. So we had, I feel like, a fantastic experience. Believe it or not, it kind of feels like the process started a year ago. About a year ago, we were here in St. Paul. We were working with St. Paul on developing an identity for themselves, and we started to talk a little bit about Clinch River and the Clinch River Valley Initiative. And, you know, whether Buzzy knew it or not, we have this very strategic strategy where we like to create something that everybody can hate first. So that once you see that, it makes it easier to know what you like. And as part of that process a year ago, we were asked to go ahead and start thinking about how communities can relate to a region. And even though we weren't working on that process directly, we did want to go ahead and start creating kind of some benchmarks. Now, that being said, what we're going to go through today is we believe that in creating an overall marketing system and kind of branding toolbox, we can create continuity through 4 different areas. Definition of colors, definition of typefaces, the development of graphics, and the bringing together of a singular message. Now, we're going to go through each of these one by one, and what I should say, we're so pleased to have St. Paul act as our host today, and the mayor, I think, will be pleased that we will not make fun of his old logo at all today, at all. You're completely in the clear. I always like to talk about colors. I like to start with colors. And obviously, because this thread that connects us is the river, it makes sense that one of those color families would be blues relating to the water. But then also, you know, guess what? We're going to be extremely creative, so we're going to bring in greens from the outdoors. Okay, so we got blue and greens. Wow. We've broken some serious ground here. But we also want to bring in some earth tones, some natural browns and tans. And I will say, this is my time to always give my disclaimer. Colors on the screen are not exactly what they appear in reality. So that tan is a little bit darker than what you're seeing on screen. But then finally, and I think from the get-go, from our very foundation, we want our colors to amplify the dynamic nature of this process and this initiative. We also want to incorporate the sense of place. The colors of brick and reds and the communities that connect, and these natural resources that fill the gaps from Tazewell County through Russell, Scott, Wise, and create these connections between these communities. So, you know, did we do anything that broke any ground with color selection? No, but amazingly enough, by being able to hone it down into 4 main categories connected to primary values of our system, and then 8 main colors, we are going to be able to have tremendous continuity in the way we communicate, because we'll be able to have those definitions to work from. Now, the next is typeface, and in the typeface, we asked several of the committees and several of the action teams that we talked with about personality and where that should exist. And it was made pretty clear very early on. We lean far more on the side of traditional than we do contemporary, clean, this kind of, we don't want it to be sterile. We don't want it to be too rigid. And, but then we also have to think about the name itself, Clinch. And we asked the question too. We said, okay, we have the Clinch River, and the Clinch River Valley. Which one of these are the things that people use and say? And the groups pretty quickly eliminated Clinch River Valley as an actual identity. We talked about exactly why we use Clinch River Valley Initiative. We talked exactly why we brought the Valley into rallying a larger area of influence, which is completely fine. But when we talk about the product itself, the people that live here call it the Clinch. So we wanted to be able to focus in on that. So what we did was we selected 3 different typefaces. We selected a primary typeface that is actually a very narrow scale typeface. What that's going to allow us to do is going to allow us to maximize legibility on the word Clinch. That's where we're going to be using it the most, is in Clinch. It's going to give us more height for our width. So we're going to be able to increase that legibility. Why is that important? One of the first places that we're going to be deploying this is through signage. So we need to make sure that that signage is legible. Now, the secondary typeface is actually called a slab typeface. It means that it's a traditional typeface with a serif, but instead of having the kind of curved serifs, the serifs are the doohickeys on the ends of the letters. That's a technical term. Those doohickeys now are more rectangular. It, again, increases legibility. And then finally, we brought in what we called an accent typeface. This accent typeface, because of the nature of scripts, we don't use them a whole lot. But just like we can see in the identity system for Southwest Virginia, they used an accent typeface to deliver their tagline. We're going to use this accent typeface to deliver something that we're calling a moniker, and we'll go into that here in a little bit. Now, one of the other things that's kind of cool about this, and this one's going to be hard for you to see probably, but in that primary typeface, it has 3 different variations built into itself. This top one is called rough. So the edges are just roughened up. They've got a little bit of texture to them. But if we go through and we start dealing with expansion or implementation where we need a clean version, this one is called regular, and it has completely straight lines that make up the edges. And then finally, the third is called rounded. So those tips are just a little bit softer. Well, why do we do that? It gives us additional, even though so subtle, additional options in our own identity system. Does that make sense? That gives us more room to breathe. Now, the easiest part of this was when we got to graphics, because we were able to narrow down the images that we needed to include in your logo to this list. That's a joke. Your logo can't have all these things in it, yet these are the things that we heard repeated over and over and over again. So how do you pick and choose? Well, do you have to pick and choose? Or is the message that we're trying to convey this multitude of opportunity, the choice that this region affords, the things that you can do, and you can move from being on a swing bridge to riding an ATV to riding a horse to going birding and all these different options. So we're going to show you how we dealt with that here in just a second. But just know that if we tried to hone this down into 1 image, 3 images, we simply would be leaving too many others on the table. We're offering too much product to narrow down our offerings. So we've got a solution that we think will work very well for that. Now, one of the things that you might say is, it's like, well, I look at that list and it actually doesn't say mountain or river on it. Couldn't we just have a picture of a mountain and a river? And then that way we know that we're kind of covering it, then all this stuff has to do with that? Well, a lot of other people in this region, and about 2 to 3 to 4 hours to your south, and 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 hours to your north, and virtually everybody connected with Appalachian Regional Council, all had that same idea. But the thing that we're doing here is we're developing the opportunity to do. This system is about giving people experiences, not simply showing them something, letting them live it. And that's what we really want to capture with this overall system. So before I get into the graphics themselves, I'd like to talk a little bit about message. And what we do with that is we create what we call a brand statement. This brand statement attempts to bring together all those comments that we heard you say over our visits, whether touring, being on the ground, or whether meeting with these action teams directly. And this brand statement is our attempt to take all those valuable things that you all are passionate about and convert it into a direction that'll help us to tell the story. So I'm going to do my best to read this for you. In a little known and often misunderstood region of Southwest Virginia, there runs a hidden river, surrounded by the richest and most diverse collection of life in all of North America. This is the Clinch, and it is the heart and soul of the place we call home. From its headwaters in Tazewell to the Tennessee line, the Clinch winds its way over 100 miles to create a secret world of adventure and ecological wealth. As it flows, it grows, and it changes. Clinch traverses meadows and mountain passes, waterfalls and river rapids, nature preserves and small towns. It is pastoral and serene, rugged and challenging, all while creating its own unique ecosystem. A world that boasts the richest diversity of fish in Virginia, the broadest array of plants and trees, and some of the rarest species on Earth. A world fed by the Clinch. And it's not just the Clinch, it's our Clinch. It's our front porch, and it's our backyard. That fuels a deep respect and a realization that we all are keepers of the river. It is essential to our livelihood, providing us recreation and sustenance, tranquility and commerce. The Clinch is an outdoor classroom, as our Estanoa Project and Ecological Symposium lead our children and educators to discoveries of biodiversity and sustainability. Near the headwaters of the river, the Crab Orchard Museum interprets the frontier life of early inhabitants of this hidden valley. A testament to our devotion to the river lives in Cedar Bluff, where an ecological tragedy was met with a sustained conservation effort. Through mussel nurseries, data collection, and restoration monitoring, we have continued to replenish the Clinch and its numerous endangered and threatened aquatic species. It's our Clinch. It's our connection. It's our Main Street. The Clinch is the thread that connects our towns, from Tazewell to Richlands, Cleveland to St. Paul. The hometowns of the Clinch celebrate the activity that the river brings through our festivals, museums, and markets that bear its name. And our small businesses, shops, and restaurants cater to the river's guests. We are poised to position this river that we love to drive the vision that we have built. Our Clinch, it's our home. It's your journey. We invite you to come discover the Clinch, whether it's pedaling the Transamerica Bike Trail through Honecker or riding your horse show in Dungannon. The Clinch River Valley's diverse outdoor recreation opportunities is immeasurable. On the Clinch, you can fish for smallmouth bass, navigate your kayak through rapids, or take a leisurely float down the river. On its banks, you can hike to the ruins of a French settlement, warm yourself by a campfire, or cross over the river on one of many historic swing bridges. The river has always been a destination for families within the valley who have long experienced the secluded swimming holes, rope swings, and secret fishing spots. The Clinch is the destination, and it provides a lifetime of exploration. Come discover the Clinch, Virginia's hidden river, and let your journey begin. So all of a sudden, what you do is you start to connect those dots with all those things that you said over and over and over again. And there is a lot of diplomacy that occurs in that document. There's a lot of making sure that we cover different counties, different places, different amenities. That's very, very important whenever you're taking advantage of a regional effort. And then what you start to see is you start to see this strong place, this strong opportunity that comes together to offer you a place that people can fall in love with. Now, if you stop there, it's one of those things where it's like, well, I mean, okay, we could take it or leave it. That sounded good, but how's this going to work as we deploy it? So we look at the overall system. We wanted to give you something. We made some very, very clear design choices here. First of all, we wanted to give a logo that was self-contained. It lived inside of something. And the reason we wanted to do that was that maximized the ability for other partners to use it. It makes it so much easier to implement in a consistent way. So we've shown a multicolor version that's got some texture to it up top, a cleaner version that's one color with white inside, and then a black and white version, and then also a scaled version that goes a little smaller, changes up some of our dynamics, gives us the ability to use that much smaller. Because we understand that if we want some of our communities to begin to integrate this into their own marketing efforts, then we're going to need them to have something that they can use that does not cannibalize their own unique identities. Now from there, to me, where it really gets fun is when we jump back to this. It's like, well, you know what? This sure is a pretty place. I was hoping for a pretty picture on our logo. Well, guess what? We don't need to use pretty graphics because we can use pretty pictures. But we do want to be able to address all these opportunities. Well, how can we do this? Let's do it by deploying a comprehensive system of image-based icons that can start to collect all of the different opportunities together and help people to clearly and easily understand what is available to them where. So now all of a sudden, as you start to get through, you start to be able to easily organize your assets. Whether it's a place-based asset that you simply connect relevant icons for that particular geography, or whether it's a theme-based assimilation where you're bringing together all the opportunities that afford paddling or fishing or cultural opportunities. Now, going back to that, you'll remember those colors that we showed you were connected to themes. So for the most part, we've done our best to try to connect those icons that are in blue are directly related to the water. The icons in green are related to outdoors. The icons in brown are direct organized trails, whether it's horseback riding, hiking, biking, motorcycle, ATV. I tried to be as deliberate as possible in some of the icon selection. For example, I selected a Goldwing as a motorcycle instead of a chopper. Why? I think we all know why. Some of you, when you look at this, you might cringe when you see some of these things because it's like, oh, do we really have to promote that? But it is this well-rounded approach. It begins to give us an opportunity to connect all of our different our assets and our experiences. Now, one of the other things that's interesting is, as you begin to deploy these, you might even decide that you have a certain standard that's set. Like, for example, there's zip lining on here. We heard a lot of talk about zip lines, but I don't think that there's the opportunity to zip line currently. Now, does one opportunity in a 4-county area to zip line justify having a zip line icon yet? Or do you need to earn an image by being able to know that you have enough diversity to comfortably deliver that? So those are all things for you to think about. Now, I am not talking about some sort of certification process where you earn zipline status. That's not, I'm not trying to overcomplicate it, but just understand that this gives you a platform for infinite growth. As you develop product, as you nurture your own experience to visitors and locals alike, you can grow this system, but we've given you 30 to start with. And that's a pretty good start, I think. Now, from that, there are also some unanswered questions that we can't answer for you, but one is the identity of Kirby itself. We, at one point, were thinking that we need to make sure that we go in and very much formalize the distinction between the organization and the destination. But then at the same time, we heard a couple folks yesterday that made really good points about how, you know, there could be a difference between an organization and an initiative. We, although we meet together, we are also representatives of multiple organizations, multiple groups, multiple stakeholders. So as you think about that, I just wanted to give you something to be able to kind of connect it to. This is loose, and you have to understand that curvy to a certain degree needs to be formal sometimes and invisible other times. It needs to be very well organized at particular points, and it needs to seem like a pure magic grassroots effort at others. So being able to have that own flexibility in your organizational identity, I think, is really, really important. And I think that all those things that I say are completely independent of what you decide about organizational. You know, how do you organize? Do we become our own nonprofit or not? That doesn't really matter. Whether you do or you don't, you're still going to need that flexibility. You're still going to need the ability to be very, very polished at sometimes, and oh, shucks, we're just a bunch of folks getting together, making things happen at others. Because of that difference in identity, I went ahead and I gave you a mountain and river here so that those of you that just absolutely needed to see that in the depths of your soul could have something there to connect to. But does that make sense? Does everybody understand the difference between a destination identity and this organization or initiative identity? That's a real, real important thing, because the fact is, we don't need people to be involved with Kirby to be able to benefit from the destination brand. We don't require membership in the initiative for a business to be able to take this and run with it. So we need to make sure that there's a very clear distinction between the two. Now, where it starts to get fun as well is with some of these action teams and the programs that they might deploy. Whether it is the Environmental Education Symposium, whether it is the Riverkeeper program, river cleanups, you have a whole host of different things that you all have talked about. But then what you can do is, for any events that you directly program, it reinforces the Clinch identity, and it also reinforces the system of icons. Now, one of the initiatives that we saw, one of the action items for the downtown team, was one that very much intrigued me. And it was a focus on developing capacity building opportunities for the communities in the Clinch. And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. We talked about the organizational approach behind that. what I'd like to recommend for you all to consider is to package this up as the hometowns of the Clinch. Now, whether this becomes a region-wide Main Street program, whether it simply becomes an organization focused on building capacity and entrepreneurism in those communities, that's completely up to you. But what it starts to do is it starts to package and make a clear connection between these very, very distinct and different communities and their connection, this thread being the river itself. Now, in that same vein, being able to logically cluster some of the regional events that occur, pulling a word directly out of the brand statement and simply packaging together the Clinch celebrations. And this is events, festivals, things that go on that are enhancing the product development of the region. And this is simply putting them in a different wrapper. It's not making the community change that identity of their festival whatsoever. It's simply allowing us to cluster them together to create a more marketable message and hopefully create more economic impact by grouping them together and creating a sense of density. Now, in addition to that, I want to recommend some print pieces, some things that you all had identified for yourselves, other things that kind of came up as we talked as a group. And the first is a biodiversity guide. We heard folks mention over and over again the biodiversity. This is an unbelievably biodiverse area. It's one of the most biodiverse areas in the continent. But then when you ask the question, how does that convert into an engine to drive visitors? That's where it got a little bit harder. The connection with our environmental education, I think, is very clear. Makes complete sense, and nobody questions that. And the potential for economic growth based off of that entire segment is clear and simple. But being able to gather together some of those rare species, put them in a guide like this, potentially creating or eliminating the desire for people to go hunt for rare and protected mussels themselves so they can take one home with them, or some of those dynamics that are a little interesting. But this could also be a piece that could push birding, push other outdoor and nature and animal related. But it's almost, I was telling a story about a bird guide, the North American Guide to, indigenous bird species or whatever that I had growing up, and it was amazed to me for some reason. I love to look through it, and believe it or not, the folks that are doing this kind of travel have a very positive economic impact. So being able to create some ways that convert the message that we love to deliver about our biodiversity into more of a marketing power. Now, just some crazy kind of fun things. I mean, if you've seen me at all this week, I like to wear hats. So one of the first things I always like to do is a hat. But, believe it or not, what's so funny about this is you go into most communities and you probably can find something with the local high school on it. But other than that, you might be hard-pressed to show any kind of connection with the place or region. We want to fuel our local businesses with merchandising opportunities, whether it's hats, whether it's doing cool shirts that people actually want to wear, believe it or not, not things that, you don't want to design the next shirt that you're going to wash your car in. You want to create something that people want to have. And, with that whole economic development, community development spend, even bringing in things like shopping bags and that kind of stuff, all of that is very, very important. Now, stepping away from the river for just a moment, even gathering together things like our historical assets. This is a historical asset inventory, bringing together those sites, the museum sites, battlegrounds, mills, historical markers, all the different things that exist in the region, making it easy to find and kind of easy to follow collection of those assets, I think is always good. An annual outdoor guide. This really is the regional visitor guide. Whether it is talking about and identifying your boat access, fishing access, trailheads, accommodation, shopping, dining, events, all those things. Getting this on a very good, solid production schedule, actually knowing how many you can produce and how many you can distribute, so you're not buying more than you need, and really creating something that can be a good, strong driver to help people realize the opportunities available to them. This might be a long-term goal too, because in the meantime, or in the short term, it might actually be far more important for us to help cultivate capacity in our local communities and make sure that they know how to market their own local assets in the things that they're investing in. Now, in addition to that, we know that when I walked in, there was the maps, some of the maps that you guys have been working on. I know that right now on your website, there's a very, very interesting map through World Map that's dynamic, and you can add all kinds, add and take away. You can see all the feeder streams. You can see the definition of the valley itself and all that kind of stuff. That is a great, great resource, but you want to always make sure that you have a good, clean, simple, easy-to-use map that converts to consumer level as well. And so what we did is we went ahead and created a vector version of the 4-county map. We went ahead and dropped down road lines, river lines. This is the map that we'll be able to very easily add very visual access points, all those different assets to. But it is intended to be consumer side. And that's fine. This is not the least bit redundant to anything that you've done. It's an additional tool, but this will give you the product that makes it very easy for you to go and run with. Now, with this, you'll notice something interesting, and I just wanted to kind of point it out. It's got our Clinch River logo there in the bottom right, but then it also includes a Kirby logo. The reason I did that was I wanted to point out that there will definitely be times when you might do something that you want or deserve a little bit of credit for. When you start putting this out, if you were to produce these on flat glue pads and made them available in the region, people are going to love it. They love things on glue pads. Something about, I don't know whether it's the glue or what it is, but people love glue pads. Isn't that right, Randy? You guys make them, I'm sure.
Could you describe the glue pad?
Yeah, the glue pad's just like a notepad. It's the chipboard back. Normally it has 50. With these, they'll do maybe 100 sheets of paper with a glue binding. And then that way, when somebody comes into your business, let's say, and they say, hey, I'm looking for a place I can get on the river, you take that map out and you say, well, you're right here, and you draw on it with your Bic pen. And you say, you need to go down here and go over to here, and then you rip it off that glue pad and give it to them.
You're trying to say a tear-off map.
A tear-off map, yeah. We call them glue pads.
Question.
Yes, sir.
You picked, it's a pretty color for the logo of the Clinch.
Mm-hmm.
But why did you not choose blue since it's water?
Because everything that we're going to show, and you'll see it in just a minute when I get to the ads, it's a great question. Why don't you pick blue when you're going to do the water? Because the images that we're going to use in our marketing are mainly going to be blues and greens. So it allows our identity to jump out from our actual representations of our place. And you'll see that. But that is a great question. And it was a very deliberate choice. We sat there and we said, we know that the images we use are going to be in our blues, greens, and browns. So if our identity system exists in that red, it'll allow it an opportunity to shine in conjunction with the photos. Now, we talk about signage a lot. If we're going to talk about this being Virginia's hidden river, then when people come into the valley, congratulate them for finding it. Having a sense of personality with signs is absolutely okay. I will never forget, we had some in downtown Greenville when they had made a decision to take out a 4-lane highway bridge and replace it with a pedestrian suspension bridge. And in the course of closing that bridge down, they had a series of signs to teach people the new way to drive. And I remember the last sign on that detour actually said, "See, that wasn't that bad." And it's just that personality in the signage. It really changes that dynamic instead of constantly throwing your typical message at them. But then in addition, we want to make sure that we can use things that can be incorporated in the community's signage as well. There will be region-wide signage, but then once you enter into the place, once you enter into the communities themselves, the identity of Clinch River needs to become subservient to that personality and that community itself. We've got to allow our communities to shine. One of the things we talk about on a regional effort is a regional brand has got to be able to operate as an umbrella sometimes and as a plate offering up its entrees others. And the moment we get into a community itself, we convert from an umbrella to a plate. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple things here because, you know, this is another decision that you all have to make for yourselves. I went ahead and showed you 2 different paths, completely up to you, but one is if you choose to try to organize a regional capacity building program, then you might incorporate these entry signs into communities as the designation of those participating programs. So that's why I'm showing the Hometowns of the Clinch attached to the pole. If you launch Hometowns of the Clinch program, then you simply announce arrival into those communities with Hometowns of the Clinch. Now, if you decide that instead of doing that, and instead of connecting signage to capacity building, instead you just want to maximize the sense of connection to the river, maximize the connection to the effort itself, then you could simply say a Clinch River community, and you could connect every community along the way and have them request it that way. It's up to you, but it's a discussion that I think you all need to have and you all need to decide before you go out and launch the sign strategy. Then when it also starts to get fun, and actually I've never seen anything done exactly like this, but I think it's kind of interesting. Starting to use those icons to help identify where access points, and you know, I use access points a little different than the access points team does, because I think of every experience access point. I think of every downtown is an access point. Every opportunity to start a trail, to start an experience, those are all our experience access points. So being able to help orient people to that, but when we go into our physical river-oriented access points, being able to identify through icons alone the kinds of activities that are not allowed, but the kinds of activities that exist at that particular access point. You're not going to be able to paddle everywhere. So if we're at an access point, say, close to Tazewell, it might be more along the lines of fishing, and maybe we might get to float a little bit in a tube. You don't, you know, but as you move, you change and you grow the opportunities that are available. But the thing that's nice about icons are simple to understand. So it makes it easy for people to know where to go. And then also getting into the kiosks themselves. And you all talked about wanting to say a whole lot to people. You want to tell them a lot of things. Yeah. And
I was translating the second line.
yeah. And, you know, the thing that we need to remember is, first of all, sadly, people don't necessarily read. as much as we want them to. And just because we write it doesn't mean it's read and understood. In addition to that, we had a really great conversation yesterday, and we need to understand that the signage that exists at our river access points are going to be some of the most remote signage that is going to exist away from the stewards of a place. If you put a sign in the center of downtown St. Paul, it is going to be less likely to be vandalized than a sign that might be out on a river access point. So I want you to be real mindful about selecting where the information that you share occurs. One of the big things that this initiative has repeated over and over again is enhancing the connection between the towns and the river. So maybe what we do is, instead of taking some of that information that we talked about delivering at the access points, maybe we move them into our downtowns. Maybe we inform about species in that particular area. Maybe we talk about overall context maps. Maybe we tell some of our biodiversity stories there, in the heart of that core of the community. And then the signage that exists out at our access points are the standardized signs that if they get vandalized, it's the same thing. It does not get overly customized from access point to access point. So just want you to think real clearly about that. And it sounds like you all have formed a signage committee today. Is that what happened? To be able to address that. I think that's a really smart move, because as you get into this, you'll want to make very logical decisions. And, you know, we just look up to Tazewell County and the back of the dragon, right? Back of the dragon. Or tongue of the dragon, tail of the dragon. Yes. This is the back of the dragon. Put out 10 signs and 9 were stolen. And, you know, to a certain degree, like you said, you know, you nailed your brand when the signs get stolen, because there's obviously something that people love about it. But when you know how much the bill was to have them produced, it stings a little. But then what I also want to do is I want to show you some of the ways that you can start to tell this story and market this dynamic place. And I want to show you, I mean, all the images that you will see are images that were taken in a 3-day trip. And they were taken all over the valley. And it's always fun to start with a nice, we stopped and saved a couple turtles along the way. But what I really want to show you here is, first of all, we've got a couple things going on. We've got a big, dominant, horizontal image. And the reason that we're doing that is because we are not going to be able to be diplomatic and show every opportunity in an ad. So instead of trying to say everything, we want to know that as we market this region, it is going to take consistent and frequent repetition of all the opportunities that we have to offer. So we want everything that we do to make impact. So give somebody the opportunity to really hone in. Now, that one was kind of fun, but you know, something else that I wanted to do was I wanted to start to bring these icons into the ad composition as well. So now what we're doing, as simple as an icon is, every single time you see an image like this, you start to deposit it into one of those icons. Now, this one's a little weird, and I started off with it because it's the most weird. These are the cabins behind Cuz's. So that's why there's a knife and fork there, or a fork and spoon there, or spork and spoon there. Cuz's has these 2 great cabins, and it was funny because what we found out was most of the people that stay at the cabins stay there because they go to Cuz's and they maybe drink more than they should, and they need somewhere to stay. So, but really, really great opportunity right out the back door. This was on River Road, Scott County. Start to see with each of these, very simple, clean headline to a certain degree that we could have these headlines huge. I'm keeping them small on purpose. I want somebody to hunt for it a little bit. It reinforces that whole sense of discovery.
Is the headline the upper left?
Yeah, yeah. Being able to connect businesses in the community into the system. Just even little simple images, textures.
This boy's a fat.
Ivy's got 3.
That was creeper. It was creeper. I'm a Boy Scout. I know what poison ivy looks like.
Poison Ivy's got 3 leaves.
Yeah.
That's 5. Sits on these people like a mask.
It was marijuana. No.
Not edgy enough.
But you just start to see, you create this sense of place. You start to connect these dynamic images of not just the river, but connecting in those assets. Got a book in there for you, Doug. Did you notice? Yeah. You know, those overall experiences, the subtlety of the message actually helps to enhance the multitude of what you have to offer. By whispering, you can say more than you can yelling a lot of the time. Yeah, that was fun. That was in Cleveland at Waterfall. When we were at the waterfall, there's a hawk and a couple crows or something having some fun. I don't know that they were buzzards. They weren't that big. It was funny watching. Yeah. That was taken out of a moving vehicle. So.
That should actually say turkey's alive.
Yeah. Now, I did not jump the fence to walk on this bridge that was forbidden, unlike some members of the team. So what you start to see is a system that it just makes sense. It when you get a new asset, you know exactly how to tell the story because it's not that hard. If a business wants to participate and tie into this, they can do it because it's not that hard. We haven't overcomplicated it. And I like the expandability, but I also like the fact that it is both simple and complex at the same time. We've been able to create a system that allows us to connect right now to 30 different areas of interest and be able to grow with very, very little effort, but at the same time constantly deposit positive experiences and positive equity back into the overall identity of the Clinch. So with that, it is your turn. I'm going to open it up for some questions, thoughts, initial gut reaction. Buzzy. Is it better than last time?
Well, I didn't realize what you've done the last time. And I thought what you were doing is you were trying to take the St. Paul logos and then make the Clinch very similar. This is wonderful. I mean, it has its own personality. It's itself. Yes, I love it.
Good, good. And the big thing that when you go back and you look at what we did in St. Paul, there's still a couple connective tissues that very much exist and that we continue to promote. One of the things that we promoted in St. Paul was the opportunity for them to know themselves and market themselves as St. Paul on the Clinch. Whether we knew it then or not, we called it on the Clinch instead of on the Clinch River. I don't remember why we made the decision, but we did. Being able to allow the communities to maintain their own unique identities while connecting to the region is essential. If this effort was one that tried to force every community to look alike, then it would fail. Because our own passion is connected with the place we call home. So I'm passionate about Cleveland, and I'm passionate about Richlands, and I'm passionate about Tazewell. And if we take this effort and make them feel squashed, then it's going to die. If it has that opportunity for them to shine and be connected with something bigger and greater, then that's where it can really work. But I appreciate that comment a lot.
I don't understand how you can design a logo without a map. I mean, doesn't there have to have a map of the region?
Well,
And shouldn't you name it after the shape of the counties?
Absolutely,
It should be
absolutely.
called the Tomahawk region, because I was looking at
It should be called the Tomahawk region, yes, yes. And then the dynamic, cooperative marketing opportunities between Tomahawks and Spearheads is amazing.
I just thought.
We pay him to come up with these.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I thought you would.
Sure, I'll link it.
Yeah, I do. Anything else?
I love the Virginia Hidden River. Thank you, Rod, for that.
I think that was his.
Somebody, well.
Ben's.
You know what? All that conversation, those conversations that we had, I mean, look, so much of everything that you see and you heard today came directly out of your expertise. Our job is simply to assimilate it and be able to remove a certain amount of, this sounds horrible, but remove a certain amount of emotional minutia while maintaining the emotion that drives the system. And you all are the expert of the Clinch. We simply are decent at being able to help people tell their story. So as we came together over these past 2 visits, I feel like we've been able to create a system that does kind of hone in on that. Rob, what do you think?
That was very pretty. It's a deal.
Good.
I just want to know why I got picked on. Lou hated it too.
Yeah, but you know, first of
She's
all,
freer than I am, right?
well, Lou didn't announce that she hated it until after you had made it very clear. Lou's far better at keeping it. She's like, I know we won't use that, so I don't even have to
really
say.
want to see what you were going to show us last time, this time. I just wanted that clear.
Yeah,
Started out first day right.
you got it. You got
Yesterday, when Frank was talking about putting a sign from a tree
Mhm.
like that, wouldn't it be better to maybe try week and number them?
Absolutely, and I don't know. Frank Kilgore brought up a point yesterday about we're going through all these efforts to create a good, logical access point system. But if you're on the river and you're unfamiliar with where you are, if you flow right past your access point, your fun experience has turned into a not very fun experience. So I am pleased to announce the first primary task of the signage committee. No, that's a great point. Whether those signs are somehow in the river itself or simply made sure that they are visible but also flood resistant in however they are implemented. I think that's a great point because I was thinking the same way. It's kind of like, well, I mean, maybe we need to think a couple different options, and depending on the geography of the particular place, we might have to have a couple different logistic solutions to be able to sign those takeout points as well. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Anything else? Lou, since you hated the last one, go for it.
You're putting me on the spot.
I am.
I really did like this one a lot better, I'll tell you. And I like the way that, we can still, I like the way you presented it on the pole that had our logo as far as St. Paul is concerned. It has almost a state park look, which I had an argument over that the other day.
You think it does? You think it's got a state park look?
Well, yes, I do. It's got
I think
that,
it's the brown color.
it's probably the brown color.
One point, we're gonna have to, at the end, we're going to leave the logos on the screen so everybody can look at them on the screen. So I think they might be a little bit different than.
I would say that, you know, there's